Some days we may wonder, what's going to happen? Will everything be okay? What can I do? And these days we find ourselves too often stuck with these questions on repeat. What's going to happen? Will anything be okay? What can I do? We grasp at signs and markers, articles of news and analysis, Facebook memes and forwarded emails as if the new zodiac capable of forecasting all that life may yet bring our way, as if we could prepare, as if life had ever made any promises of making sense or of turning out the way we thought, as if we are not also actors in this still unfolding story. For this time that we gather to surrender to the mystery, shall release ourselves from the needing to know, the yearning to have it all figured out, and also the burden of believing we either have all the control or none. Here in our songs and our silence, our stories and our reflections, we make space for a new breath, a new healing, a new possibility to take root. A new possibility that is courage forged in the fire of our coming together and felt in the spirit that comes alive in this act of faith, that we believe still that a new world is possible and that we are creating it already here and now. Come, let us worship together. And also, as we're opening this service, I would like to reach out a warm welcome to our new ministerial intern, Ken Marino, who you'll be seeing starting in this service and for the rest of the year. Welcome, Ken, and let us worship together.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Berkeley. My name is Deborah Schmidt. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I will be your worship associate this morning. This is a welcoming congregation, and we are always working on how to better welcome and care for one another. If this is your first time here, we are so very glad you have joined us. And whoever you are, we welcome you in the fullness of who you are. As we begin, we want to acknowledge that this church occupies land in Huichin, the unceded territory of the Chochenyo-speaking Ohlone people. We understand that we benefit from the seizure and occupation of this land. We acknowledge and embrace our responsibility to take restorative action. We affirm that this is deeply felt and commit our congregation to be in right relationship with Indigenous communities, aligning in solidarity, supporting Indigenous projects, and caring properly for the land. Please take a moment to prepare yourself and your space for our time together. You might want to bring a candle and a way to light it so that you can join in the chalice lighting from your home. Now, let us kindle our flames with the words of Bruce Southworth. For the gift of this day and for our community of spiritual nurture and compassion, we give thanks. May our many sparks meet and merge in communion of heart and soul. And now please join with us in singing our opening song, I Know I Can. The words will be on your screen.
The days be dark with storms, and burdens weigh my heart. The troubles wait at every turn. I know
Please join with me in saying our covenant. Love guides this church. The quest for truth and justice is its common purpose. To give thanks, listen deeply, speak with care, honor our differences, and seek and grant forgiveness. These things we covenant with one another.
Today's story is titled The Artist, but really it could be titled a variety of different things. Creation, possibility, dreams, surrender, or stubbornness. You'll have to listen to it and decide for yourself. One bright sunny day, two pieces of paper were sunbathing in the midday warmth, enjoying the pleasures of the summertime. One piece of paper was called Snow White. She was pure white and so very proud of her pristine condition. "Look at me," she said to her companion. "Did you ever see such a beautifully white piece of paper?" Her companion was called Pure as the Dawn. She, too, was amazingly white and wonderfully free from the slightest stain or mark. The two pieces of paper nearly outshone each other in the midday sun. But in the distance, a figure approached on the horizon. He caught their attention. As they watched, he approached ever closer. "Who can that be?" asked Snow White. "What is he carrying in his arms?" wondered Pure as the Dawn. The figure came closer and closer until he was only a few yards away from the two paper friends. In his arms, he carried a palette and paintbrushes. In his eyes, there was a curious dream-like light, a love light, but gentle. In his heart, he carried a dream. "What do you think he wants?" Snow White asked. "You don't think he's gonna paint on us, do you?" Pure as the Dawn flinched as the words sank in. "I think that is exactly what he intends to do," she murmured. "There is no way I will allow him to paint on me," said Snow White. "No painter is going to spoil my purity." "But what if he's a master painter?" Pure as the Dawn reflected. "He might create a masterpiece on our pure white emptiness. He might make us into masterpieces." "But," said Snow White, "then again, he might make a complete mess of us. No, I am not taking any risks like that. I'm going to stay the way I am until the day I die. So it came that the artist approached both pieces of paper and asked their permission to paint his dream on them. Snow White said, "No way." And she remained pure white and empty until the day the wind and weather finally turned her back into pulp. Pure as the Dawn said, Do as you will with me. I trust you. I will entrust myself to the work of your hands." And the artist, he turned her into a masterpiece, a unique and beautiful representation of the dream that he was carrying in his heart, so that in all the years to come, many, many people would look at the artist's picture and into its depths and beauty, and they would rediscover their own lost dreams.
Rise up, O flame, by thy light glow. Show to us beauty, vision, and joy. Rise up, O flame, rise up, O flame, rise up, O flame, by thy light beauty. Show to us beauty, vision, and joy. Rise up, O flame, by thy light glowing. Show to us beauty, vision, and joy. Rise up, O flame, by thy light glowing. Show to us beauty, vision, and joy.
We now enter the time in our service that we make for our hearts and our spirits, for our cares and our concerns for one another. We lift up and hold the joys, the sorrows, the concerns, and the challenges we may each be facing. During our time of silence, I invite you to share any joys or sorrows or significant milestones of your own in the comments section. I invite us all to hold these cares in the compassionate embrace of this loving community.
As summer changes into fall, we take this time to reflect on the change all around us. The Growing Edge by Howard Thurman. Amended for inclusion. Look well to the growing edge. All around us worlds are dying, and new worlds are being born. All around us life is dying, and life is being born. The fruit ripens on the tree. The roots are silently at work in the darkness of the earth against a time when there shall be new leaves, fresh blossoms, green fruit. Such is the growing edge. It is the extra breath from the exhausted lung, the one more thing to try when all else has failed, the upward reach of life when weariness closes in upon all endeavor. This is the basis of hope in moments of despair, the incentive to carry on when times are out of joint and all have lost their reason, the source of confidence when worlds crash and dreams whiten into ash. The birth of a child, life's most dramatic answer to death. This is the growing edge incarnate. Look well to the growing edge.
Voice still and small, deep inside all, I hear you call, singing. In storm and rain, sorrow and pain, still will remain, singing, calming my fears, quenching my tears, through all the years, singing. Voice still and small, deep inside all, I hear you call, singing. In storm and rain, sorrow and pain, still will remain, singing, calming my fears, quenching my tears, through all the years, singing.
Our liberal faith draws from many sources, including humanist, Christian, and Jewish teachings, the words of prophetic people from many times and places, and wisdom from other traditions. But the first source of our faith is our own experience. It is my pleasure to share a short poem I wrote reflecting on the etymology of the word courage, the roots of courage. Our word courage is from the Old French cœur, which comes in turn from the Latin cor, the root of all names for the heart in the Romance languages, cuore, cœur, corazon, corazao. Farther back on the language tree, the Latin cor and the Greek cardia share a Proto-Indo-European root, caird. In some tongues, the K softened to H, becoming the German Herz, and our own heart. Cor also beats at the center of accord, heart to heart, concord of one heart, cordial, a tonic for the heart, encourage, to hearten, and record, to learn by heart. So courage is really all about living from the heart, letting nothing come between the truth of ourselves and our being in the world. Is it courage that allows us to hope, or is it hope that begets courage? All over the world, these two gifts of the Spirit weave together and nourish each other. This longer poem celebrates the Sky Lantern Festival of Thailand. Sky lanterns. Dusk deepens and the full moon flames white in a soft aura. In the company of hundreds, all carrying komloi, she walks with her lover toward the Narawat Bridge. On their young skin the air weighs moist and warm, sweet with incense, full of music and voices. They stop to write a prayer on their lantern, people flowing around them. The crowd comes to rest at the night market near the temple. Holding the paper shell by its bamboo rim, they kindle the waxy ring and wait for the magic moment when the air inside heats to buoyancy and the lantern pulls out of their gentle grasp to lift moonward, joining the countless others that drift past the temple spires, golden against the black of sky. Rising vertically at first, they lose momentum and are taken by a slow current that makes them swim together like phosphorescent fish across the darkness. Dwindling as they recede, they become a constellation, then a galaxy, the radiance and hope that each one of us always carries, now made visible.
I'd like to start us today with a long-ish reading by Unitarian Frederick May Elliott. Today, the churches of our association stand together in full commitment to the overthrow of totalitarian power wherever it seeks to dominate free people or destroy the institutions of free nations, and in complete dedication to the establishment of a world order in which an enduring peace shall be possible. Together, we are ready to pay whatever price may be exacted by the ideals of freedom and democracy, not only through the period of wars and violence, but also through periods of reconstruction. Already, this commitment has brought a deeper solidarity, which extends beyond this continent to include our siblings of the free spirit in every land. We look first to a candle of courage, and we look specifically to our chalice to represent this candle of courage. From the origins of the symbol in World War II, when it stood for such, to its use today as the beacon of our faith, it is a candle of courage. But we shall look to our churches for more than the reinforcement of courage. There are other candles which we must bring in, whose light within the sanctuary of our churches may symbolize the principles of our free faith through the dark days that lie ahead, and give us strength to apply our religion with unfaltering devotion to the special needs of the present crises. There is the candle of humanitarian service, which is always shone with steady and reassuring flame upon the altar of our faith. This tradition is continually given new meaning and wider scope through the ongoing generosity of many. Then there is the candle of human fellowship, deeper and more enduring than the forces that divide us by barriers of race, creed, or nationality. It will not be easy to keep this flame burning, but it would be tragic to let it flicker out. Its light of the candle of fellowship will remind us of our duty to maintain an inner sanctuary which no sudden panic of fear can destroy and no hatred invade or desecrate. With no lack of firmness in the right, as God gives us to see the right, we must nevertheless strive to keep our hearts clean of hate and desire for vengeance. Finally, there is the candle of hope, of the great hope which has inspired and invigorated our souls from far distant days, the hope of Israel and Christendom, of Isaiah and Jesus, once again made flesh in the dauntless souls who first dreamed our American dream and laid the good foundations for a new kind of society upon this continent. That hope has met countless frustrations and setbacks and defeats, but it has never surrendered. The grounds of our hope lie in just these innate qualities and capacities of our common human nature, the resources in us on which we have not drawn, the unweariable endurance of idealism. This is our gospel in sunshine and in storm. We must proclaim the message now with greater confidence than before. Bring in the candles of courage, of service, of fellowship, and of hope. Bring in the candles. It's a great reading, isn't it? Any guesses as to when it was written? You ready for it? 1942. 1942. What surprised me when I first read it was how incredibly relevant it was to the challenges that we are facing today. To say that this past year and a half, this past few years or several years have been rough would be an understatement. Not only do we have the continuing challenges brought by the pandemic, those we face around us in our community, our worries for our family and friends, and the impacts on how we gather as a church community. But we also face the so-called natural disasters, as well as continuing injustices and disparity throughout our country and world. And the many growing divides of our country that also reverberate through many of our relationships. The start of the school year has brought many of these into stark relief, as well as the painful resurgence of school violence and shootings throughout the country. And the Taliban's takeover in Afghanistan brings a new level of worry about a number of things. We've also just seen the 20th anniversary of a day that changed our country forever. The terrorism on 9/11 that took the lives of nearly 3,000 people and changed so many things on so many levels in our country and the way that we interact on the world scene. I am plenty worried about so many different things as we go through each and every day. What the next day, the next week, the next year, and our larger future will hold. And I bet that I'm not alone in many of my worries either. I'm anticipating that this next year ahead of us is going to be rough and that we are going to need each other as we go through it. And so I was excited when I found the reading by Frederick May Elliott. It seemed so relevant, and I immediately wanted it to be one of our guideposts as we head into this year. We talk about resilience a lot, and Elliott's 4 candles speak to some of the necessary ingredients for resilience: courage, acts of service, fellowship, and hope. Each of these are tremendous topics on their own, so I'll just briefly lift up each of them. First, the candle of courage, which I see in our chalice that we light each Sunday and in many of our other gatherings together, including many of our virtual ones. Even the origins of the symbol of the chalice speak to acts of courage. When Unitarians and many others defied the Nazis and put themselves at risk to help others. We'll be hearing some more about that history in a couple of months, so hang on to that for later. Courage isn't the opposite of fear, but rather acting anyway despite feeling afraid. I'll say that one more time. Courage isn't the opposite of fear, but rather acting anyway despite feeling afraid. The candle of courage reminds us of a few things. First, it reminds us to remember our role models. These are folks who demonstrate the courage we may hope for, the courage that inspires us when we'd rather crawl back under a rock instead of doing otherwise. I expect that some of us may have some courage role models in common, but that we'll have other different ones as well. Some of our role models may be folks who are well known, and others may be folks in our own lives, folks we know personally, or even our own ancestors. I remember different folks at different times, depending on the situation or what inspiration I'm needing in that moment. One of my ancestors often comes to mind. Obadiah Holmes was his name, and he was one of the early settlers of Rhode Island. He ended up being a religious dissident of sorts and opposed the established institutions of the day. See why I like him? One of the things he's known for is something he said while he was at the whipping post, one of the times he was at the whipping post. After being whipped, he looked back at this punisher and said, "You have struck me as with roses. You have struck me as with roses." When in doubt, well, I doubt I could have that kind of composure while in that kind of pain or that kind of situation. His determination and perseverance are something that I often look up to. Not only remembering our role models, but courage also means the choice to act. Fear can be demotivating and even emotionally debilitating. The way the human brain works, reminders of what we're afraid of are much more easily recalled than reminders of just about anything else. Whether we have the fight, flight, or freeze automatic reactions, but especially flight or freeze, we have to choose to not let the fear drive us in what we do. And blindly fighting isn't necessarily that effective either. Courage is about not letting the fear control us. The Candle of Courage says we know the fear is there and that there are plenty of things to be afraid of and to be worried about, but that instead we're going to hold onto this beacon called courage and we're going to do what we're going to do. Next, the Candle of Humanitarian Service. Service is a huge part of what we do as a congregation and what many of us as individuals do as well. Throughout the year, we give to a variety of local organizations as well as ones that do work on a larger scale. Acts of service are a core part of what we do as Unitarian Universalists. In models and theories about social justice in congregations, acts of service are one of the 5 or 6 overall realms of social justice work. It's 5 or 6, depending on what model we're looking at. Without some form of service, our congregations and our lives get to be too insular, too inward focused, rather than looking outward and contributing to the world around us. There's also plenty of research that shows the positive benefits of altruism on the person who is doing the giving. Now, I could go on about acts of service too, how it's necessary along with advocacy and partnerships, how there's humility necessary and empathy and understanding, how working alongside folks helps us to connect more than so many other things. But even more than these, in terms of resilience, engaging in acts of service helps us to get off our butts and feel like there is something that we can do. After the candle of service comes the candle of fellowship, or perhaps we may call it the candle of community. That's us, gathered together in whatever form that may take, getting through stuff together. Being part of a fellowship and a community of other like-minded folks who care. As Eliot reflects in the reading, it is not easy to keep the ember of the candle of fellowship burning, but it would be tragic to let it go out. There's a lot in our society and in the cultural shifts going on that are working against community. And there's plenty in human nature that doesn't make it easy either. In the now classic book, Bowling Alone, Robert Putnam illustrates the trend in our country away from communities and civic organizations towards more solitary endeavors. The title of the book speaks directly to the evaporation of the once popular bowling leagues. In many ways, congregations are one of the last remaining voluntary associations. And they are not without their challenges. I'm desperately afraid of the downward trends. Across denominations, congregations in this country are shrinking and losing power. We could look to the state of churches in England and in Europe for a taste of what the future of church life in the US might hold, but I truly hope this isn't the case. We need community. We need fellowship. We need the support of others and the challenge they can give us. No one, not a single one of us, can go it alone. Despite our trends towards individualism and self-sufficiency, which are different, by the way, despite the trends towards individualism and self-sufficiency, no one can successfully go it alone. Now, I like to stubbornly think I can, and I know I'm not the only stubborn person here. But we need each other for mutual support. We need each other to remind us to get out of our little comfortable bubbles of just seeing our own thoughts and opinions reflected back at us. We also need each other because of being able to do more together than alone. We need this candle of fellowship. And last, the candle of hope. We need this more than ever. And talking with folks about hope recently, I've come back over and over to the conclusion that hope isn't something outside of us. The candle of hope isn't something we can reach for and find somewhere. Instead, it's not something lying around that can be conferred on someone. Hope is inside of us, inside of each of us, and the only person who can reach it and grow it is ourselves. That's the true candle of hope, the light of hope that we are carrying. But that doesn't mean our hope isn't affected by things around us. We need reminders of our hope, things to inspire our hope, fuel for our hope. Without these, the light of our hope may give way to the darkness of despair and stay burnt out. The four candles, candles of courage, of service, of fellowship, and of hope. These are foundations and inspirations for us as we go through each day in our troubled world. I'd like to invite each of you to consider adding these four candles into your homes and your church at home rituals. I'm hoping we can add them into our worship as well once we regather. This would mean lighting 4 candles, one for courage, one for service, one for fellowship, and one for hope, both in our larger gatherings as a church, but your church at home as well. Let their light inspire you and warm your spirit, and know that others in our church community are doing the same. We must bring in the candles. We must bring them into our lives and our spaces. The times we inhabit are not easy. The challenges we face are mounting. Now, I'm sure we'll face some times in the coming year that we'd rather just not turn on the news for a while when we can't bear to see what's happening. And that's okay, but we still have to keep going. The injustices aren't going away and often seem to be getting more visibility than ever before. But our faith isn't one that calls on us to be wallflowers. It isn't one that calls on us to only do the things we're comfortable doing when we're comfortable doing them. It isn't one that calls us to decide what we believe and then sit back on a comfortable couch appreciating ourselves for that. Instead, our faith calls us to keep our eyes and our hearts open, to do what we can to change what isn't right in the world, and to do our part in creating the world we dream about. And those candles, the candles will light our way. May it be so.
As we commit together to making this a loving community, we take time to remember that UUCB needs our gifts and support. We invite you now to make an offering. Each week, half our offerings are shared with a Good Neighbor organization, who needs our financial support, and we hope you will continue to practice generosity with them during these difficult times. This month, our good neighbor is DIR, Developing Indigenous Resources, founded in 2004 by UUCB members Frederick and Roberta Shaw. Frederick Shaw, a doctor of public health, founded this health project in a large slum in India. DIR has made tremendous progress in reducing deaths from preventable diseases, infant mortality, childhood malnutrition, etc., by training local staff to teach other residents, especially mothers, how to prevent and treat various common health problems. During the pandemic, DIR is providing nourishing food to the most destitute families. When COVID-19 ends, a similar project will be activated in another nearby slum. Offerings of any value are received with gratitude. Details on how to give electronically will appear on your screen as our offertory begins. Thank you. Please join with me in dedicating our offering. We dedicate our offering and ourselves to the mission of this congregation, to create loving community, inspire spiritual growth, and encourage lives of integrity, joy, and service. It's been so good to be together today, even virtually. Before we listen to our beautiful postlude, and before we shift to our coffee hour on Zoom, I want to remind you to check out all the many things that are available in our congregation, even during the pandemic, by exploring our website, uucb.org. There you will find a link on the homepage under News to the week ahead, our weekly email newsletter, which includes a huge list of activities, announcements, and contact information. As we prepare to leave the worship service, here are a few things to note. First, please make sure to vote, return your ballot for the California gubernatorial recall election by September 14th. Personal theology resumes on September 19th at 9:30 a.m. with Jungian analyst and author Dr. Stephen Herman. Dr. Herman has recently written a new book, William James and C.G. Jung, Doorways to the Self, a comparative study of James and Jung, and a finalist for the 2020 Book Award of the International Association of Jungian Studies. This book is available online if you wish to read it. More information will be available in the week ahead. Also, Reverend Dr. Matthew Fox will be the speaker October 10th on his new book, Julian of Norwich, Wisdom in a Time of Pandemic and Beyond. More information will be available in the October Beacon. September 25th, Saturday afternoon at 4, Brian Baker and Friends, the annual fundraising concert for UUCB, will ring out in a joyful return. Titled Reflections, it compares and contrasts piano pieces by Claude Debussy, William Grant Still, John Work, George Gershwin, and Duke Ellington. Violinist Carol Schwamberger, violist Marta Toby, and cellist Betsy Sade-White join Brian for chamber music by Clara Schumann and Johannes Brahms. As a COVID precaution, there will be limited capacity in person, with social distancing and masks required. Simultaneous live stream will be available. And last, our annual Animal Blessing Worship Service will be Sunday, October 3rd. Please send us pictures of your adorable pets, both those still with you and those you remember in your heart, before September 29th to uucbanimals@gmail.com. Now please join in singing our closing song, number 346. Come sing a song with me. The words will be on the screen.
Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love that grows in the winter time. Come walk in rain with me. Come walk in rain with me. Come walk in rain with me, that I might know your mind.
Bring in the candles, the candle of courage, the candle of service, the candle of fellowship, and the candle of hope. As we journey through this ever uncertain world during these ever uncertain times, these are the foundations that hold us steady. These are the lights that guide our way. Let us find them in and around ourselves and extend the hope they bring to all we touch. And remember, you are never all alone on this journey. Blessed be.